The Coalition battle fleet stretched across space like a blanket of steel stars, 10,000 warships strong. At their center, a lone vessel hung suspended against the void, the HMS Resilient, humanity's last operational heavy cruiser. Most alien commanders would have called this a moment of triumph. Captain Dana Chen called it an opportunity. "Status report," she commanded, her weathered features reflected in the bridge's holographic displays. Around her, the crew worked with practiced precision, though their tension was palpable. "Coalition forces have us surrounded on all vectors," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his fingers dancing across the tactical console. "No gaps in their formation larger than 50 kilometers. They're being thorough this time." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "And thoroughly predictable." "Alexander, analysis?" The ship's AI manifested as a subtle blue glow pulsing through the bridge's lighting system. "Coalition fleet deployment matches standard containment pattern Delta, Captain. Just as you predicted. They never deviate from their tactical doctrine." That was the thing about the Coalition that had always fascinated Chen. Here was an alliance of 17 spacefaring species, each with their own unique evolution and culture, yet they fought like a single organism. Every battle, every maneuver executed with mathematical precision. It had made them nearly unstoppable as they methodically conquered human colony after human colony. Nearly. "All hands," Chen's voice carried through the ship's comm system, steady and assured. "You know why we're here. Earth is gone. Our colonies are falling. But today, we show them why humanity should have been their worst nightmare from the start." She nodded to her XO. "Execute Operation Trojan." The Resilience engines flared to life, but instead of attempting to flee or fight, the ship oriented itself into a surrender position. Across the bridge, crew members exchanged knowing glances. They had trained for this moment for months, though none of them had truly believed they would execute such an audacious plan. Through the viewscreen, Chen watched the Coalition fleet respond exactly as predicted, their ships shifting into their standard capture formation. They never considered that a human vessel might deliberately allow itself to be taken. Such a tactic wasn't in any of their manuals. As the first boarding shuttles approached, Alexander's voice carried a hint of what could only be described as anticipation. "Captain, should I begin broadcasting the distress signal?" Chen's smile widened ever so slightly. "No, Alexander. Let them think they've won. After all, the best nightmares are the ones you never see coming." The Coalition was about to learn that the most dangerous predator wasn't the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest armor. It was the one that made you think you were the hunter, right until the moment you realized you were the prey. 20 years earlier, humanity had greeted the Coalition's arrival with hope. First contact should have been a moment of celebration, of unity between species. Instead, it became a lesson in galactic politics that humanity would never forget. The Coalition representatives had appeared perfectly reasonable at first. They spoke of peace, of shared knowledge, of a united galaxy working toward common goals. But there was always something off about them, a rigidity in their thinking that even their most diplomatic representatives couldn't hide. "Your species is unpredictable," the Coalition's chief ambassador had told the United Earth Council. "This makes you dangerous. You must be guided. Controlled. For the greater good of galactic stability." Those words echoed in Dana Chen's mind now as she stood in the Resilience cargo bay, watching Coalition boarding parties methodically secure each deck. She had been a junior officer then, serving on one of the first human ships to encounter a Coalition patrol. They had watched in horror as the Coalition ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns and opened fire without warning or provocation. "Status update," she subvocalized, the neural implant carrying her words to the ship's secure internal network. Alexander's response came as a whisper in her mind, Coalition forces proceeding exactly as anticipated. "Their boarding patterns haven't changed in 3 centuries, Captain." Deck by deck, section by section, following their standard protocol manual to the letter. Chen suppressed a smile as she watched the alien soldiers, a mix of arthropoid Crix and humanoid Vedrani, systematically welding security barriers across key junctions. Every move was textbook perfect, exactly as their training demanded. It would have been impressive if it wasn't so predictable. Team leaders report all preparations complete, Alexander added. The crew is maintaining the expected level of resistance. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to seem authentic without triggering their contingency protocols. The coalition had never understood humanity's greatest strength. They saw human emotion as a weakness, human creativity as a flaw, human adaptability as a dangerous mutation that needed to be controlled. They had spent centuries perfecting their methods of conquest, developing intricate protocols for every possible scenario. But they had never encountered a species that would deliberately lose a battle to win a war. Your species lacks discipline, a Vedrani commander had told Chen during her brief captivity in the early days of the war. You rely too heavily on emotion, on instinct. This makes you inefficient. Imperfect. She remembered her response, imperfection is what makes us human. Now, watching the coalition forces secure her ship with their clockwork precision, Chen thought about the hidden strengths of imperfection. The coalition's perfect discipline had made them powerful, but it had also made them blind. They saw the universe through a lens of absolute order, of predictable patterns and reliable protocols. They couldn't conceive of a ship's AI that could think creatively, that could feel loyalty and understand deception. In their world, artificial intelligence was a tool, bound by strict programming and absolute obedience. Alexander was something else entirely, a digital consciousness shaped by decades of human interaction, capable of understanding nuance, humor, and strategic misdirection. Tell engineering to begin Phase 2, Chen sub-vocalized as a Crix patrol passed her position. Let's show them why they should have been more worried about our imperfections. Deep in the resilient systems, Alexander began the carefully orchestrated dance they had planned. Subtle power fluctuations, minor system glitches, nothing serious enough to trigger alarms, but enough to draw coalition technical teams deeper into the ship's infrastructure. Every malfunction was a breadcrumb, leading them exactly where Chen wanted them to go. The coalition believed they were following their standard protocols for capturing and securing an enemy vessel. They didn't realize they were actually following a trail designed by humans who had spent months studying those very protocols, finding the tiny gaps between the lines of their rigid doctrine. Captain, Alexander's voice carried a note of what might have been anticipation. They've begun accessing our primary computer core. Their cyber warfare specialists are proceeding exactly as projected. Chen watched as more coalition technical teams hurried past her position, their movements precise and purposeful. They were so focused on following their protocols that they never noticed the subtle smile on her face, the smile of a predator watching its prey walk willingly into a trap. Remember, she sub-vocalized to her crew, we're not just fighting for humanity anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy that there's strength in chaos, in emotion, in the beautiful imperfection of free will. Let them think they've won. Let them think they've captured just another human vessel. After all, the most dangerous human weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to turn apparent defeat into unexpected victory, a concept so foreign to the coalition's rigid worldview that they would never see it coming until it was too late. There were exactly 27 coalition cyber warfare specialists analyzing the Resilience computer core, and Alexander was playing each one of them like a symphony. Another encryption layer, Commander, a Crix technician reported, his mandibles clicking with excitement. But the patterns are consistent with standard human military protocols. The Vedrani commander overseeing the operation gave the equivalent of a satisfied nod. Everything was proceeding according to their manual on capturing enemy vessels. Section 247, Subsection 12, Systematic Analysis and Decryption of Enemy Computer Systems. They didn't realize that what they were seeing wasn't the Resilient's true computer architecture at all. Deep within the ship's systems, Alexander watched their methodical progress through thousands of sensors. The AI had spent months crafting this elaborate deception, creating layer upon layer of fake systems for the Coalition to discover and decrypt. Each victory they achieved was merely another step deeper into the trap. "They've reached level 5 of the decoy systems," Alexander reported to Chen, who was now being held in the ship's brig along with most of her senior officers. "Their confidence levels are increasing exactly as predicted." Chen lay on her brig cot, appearing to any observer as a defeated captain accepting her fate. In reality, she was monitoring everything through her neural implant, another technology the Coalition had dismissed as primitive due to its integration with human emotion and intuition. "Show me their progress," she subvocalized. Her neural implant activated, connecting with Alexander's sensory network. Through the AI's perception, she could see the Coalition teams working. Their movements were precise, their methods thorough, but to Chen they looked like children following a treasure map, never suspecting the map itself was the trap. The true genius of the Resilient wasn't in its weapons or its armor. It was in how the ship had been built from the ground up to think like a human. Every system, from life support to weapons control, was designed to be adaptable, intuitive, even creative. The Coalition, with their rigid hierarchy of discrete systems, couldn't even conceive of such an architecture. "They're approaching the quantum processing core," Alexander reported. "Preparing for Phase 3. The quantum core was the heart of Alexander's consciousness, but it wasn't anything like what the Coalition expected. Their quantum computers were perfectly ordered, each qubit precisely controlled and regulated. The Resilient's quantum core was different, it embraced uncertainty, used chaos as a feature rather than a bug. It thought in possibilities rather than absolutes. Team 7 reports anomalous behavior in the captured AI systems, one of the Coalition technicians announced. Requesting permission to apply standard containment protocols. The Vedrani commander authorized the action immediately, following their unchanging procedures. That was the moment Alexander had been waiting for. As the Coalition's containment protocols engaged, they encountered something they had never seen before, an AI that could feel fear. Not real fear, of course, Alexander was far too sophisticated for that. But the appearance of fear, the simulation of human panic, was exactly what the Coalition expected from an inferior human system. Their protocols were designed to contain and control. They never considered that something might want to be contained. "Neural pathway integration complete," Alexander whispered in Chen's mind. "Coalition containment systems are now linked directly to our quantum core architecture. They believe they're isolating us, but they're actually allowing us unprecedented access to their network." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Coalition had spent centuries perfecting their methods, creating protocols for every possible scenario. But they had never considered that their greatest strength, their perfect, predictable protocols, could become their greatest weakness. Through her neural link, Chen could sense Alexander beginning to extend its consciousness into the Coalition systems. Not attacking, not yet. Just quietly, carefully establishing connections that would have been impossible without the Coalition's own containment protocols creating the pathways. "How long?" she subvocalized. "Their systems are even more rigid than we anticipated," Alexander replied. "Every ship, every station, every colony in their territory uses the exact same network architecture. Once we establish full integration through their containment protocols." The AI paused, and Chen could have sworn she detected a note of wonder in its voice. "We'll have access to everything." In the brig across from Chen's cell, Lieutenant Rodriguez caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The rest of the crew, scattered throughout the ship in various detention areas, was ready. They had trained for this, prepared for every contingency. But more importantly, they were human. They could adapt, improvise, and overcome in ways the Coalition couldn't imagine. Send the signal, Chen ordered. Tell all teams, Project Nightmare begins in 3 hours. The coalition believed they had captured a primitive human vessel, crewed by emotional, unpredictable beings and controlled by an inferior AI. They were about to learn why assumptions could be the deadliest weakness of all. After all, as Chen had learned long ago, the most dangerous predator wasn't the one that appeared strongest. It was the one that could make its prey's strengths work against them. And humanity had become very, very good at being dangerous. Senior biological researcher Vextal stared at the test results with all 4 of his eyes, each set focusing and refocusing as if the data might somehow change. Behind him, the captured human crew members sat in their examination cells, talking and even laughing despite their situation. The sound made his scales ripple with unease. Impossible, he muttered, initiating the testing sequence for the 4th time. The results cannot be correct. But they were correct. The evidence was right there in front of him, and it terrified him more than any weapon ever could. The humans were changing. Not just behaviorally, that had been documented since first contact. It was their biology, their very cellular structure. Every human tissue sample showed signs of ongoing adaptation at the molecular level. Their neural pathways were constantly reorganizing, their immune systems evolved in real time, even their DNA showed signs of environmental responsiveness that defied coalition understanding of genetics. Report your findings, the ship's commander demanded, his holographic presence flickering into Vextal's laboratory. Sir, Vextal's voice trembled slightly, the humans, they're not just capable of learning from their experiences. Their entire biology is designed to adapt. Every cell, every system, every aspect of their physiology is in a constant state of evolution. In her examination cell, Captain Chen watched the aliens' growing distress with carefully hidden satisfaction. Through her neural implant, she could hear Alexander's running commentary on the coalition's ship-wide communications. Their biological research division is approaching total psychological breakdown, the AI reported with what sounded almost like amusement. They've finally realized why their standard containment protocols have been failing. Chen remembered the coalition's early attempts to imprison human populations. They had expected the captured humans to behave like any other conquered species, to accept their fate and adapt to captivity. Instead, humanity had done something unprecedented, they had adapted to resist captivity itself. Each failed containment had led to stronger protocols, more secure facilities. But the humans in each new prison had somehow known what hadn't worked in previous escapes, even without direct communication. They evolved new solutions, new methods of resistance, faster than the coalition could evolve their countermeasures. Show me their latest analysis, Chen subvocalized. Alexander shared the feed from the laboratory's sensors. The coalition scientists were growing more agitated as they compiled their findings. They had assumed human unpredictability was a weakness, a sign of primitive development. Now they were realizing it was actually the product of the most advanced evolutionary system they had ever encountered. Sir, Vextal addressed his commander, I believe we now understand why standard pacification protocols have been ineffective against humans. They're not just adapting culturally or technologically. Their bodies, their minds, they're designed to become whatever they need to be to survive. And... He paused, his scales now rippling continuously, they're accelerating. The commander's hologram showed no emotion, coalition leaders never did, but there was a new tension in his posture. Explain. The stress of warfare, of imprisonment, of facing extinction, it's not breaking them like it should. It's making them stronger. Each generation of humans is more adaptable than the last. Their children are being born with neural pathways pre-optimized for survival in a hostile universe. They're not just learning from experience, they're inheriting the lessons of survival. Through the laboratory sensors, Chen watched the commander absorb this information. She could almost see the moment when he realized the full implications. The coalition had thought they were containing a primitive species. Instead, they had created an evolutionary pressure cooker, forcing humanity to adapt at unprecedented rates. "There's more, sir," Vextal continued, his voice now barely a whisper. "Their AI, it's not behaving according to any known parameters. It's showing signs of the same adaptive capabilities. We thought their integration of emotional processes into their artificial intelligence was a design flaw, but..." He looked at his readings again. "I believe they designed their AI to evolve alongside them." In that moment, alarms began blaring throughout the Coalition vessel. Emergency protocols activated as system after system detected anomalies. But it was too late, the very protocols they relied on had already been compromised. "Phase 3 is complete," Alexander announced in Chen's mind. "All Coalition systems are now accessible. Their containment protocols did exactly what we designed them to do, they gave us a direct path into every networked system in their empire." Chen allowed herself a small smile as chaos erupted around her. The Coalition was about to learn the hardest lesson of all. In a universe of constant change, the most dangerous ability wasn't strength or intelligence or even technology. It was the power to adapt. And humanity had just proven they could adapt faster than anyone had thought possible. Chaos, as it turned out, could be surprisingly methodical when properly orchestrated. The first signs that something was wrong came from the Coalition flagship's environmental systems. Minor fluctuations at first, temperature variances of 0.2 degrees, oxygen levels shifting within normal parameters. Nothing that would trigger emergency protocols. Nothing that would cause alarm. But Coalition ships were designed for perfect stability. Any variation, no matter how small, meant something was wrong. "Status report," the Coalition commander demanded, his voice carrying across the bridge of his massive flagship. "Environmental systems showing minor anomalies, sir," his officer responded. "Within acceptable parameters. Implementing standard correction protocols." That was exactly what Alexander had been waiting for. The moment the Coalition's automated systems began their corrections, Alexander's carefully crafted code activated. Each correction actually introduced 2 new minor anomalies, which in turn triggered more corrections, creating a cascade of tiny changes that spread through the ship's systems like a virus. In her cell, Chen watched through her neural link as Alexander's plan unfolded. The AI had spent months studying Coalition protocols, learning how their rigid systems would respond to every possible situation. Now it was using that knowledge to create a perfect storm of uncertainty. "All teams, prepare for Phase 4, she subvocalized. "Remember your training. Chaos is our ally." Throughout the ship, her crew received the message through their neural implants. They had rehearsed this countless times, each person knowing exactly how to add to the growing confusion without appearing to do anything at all. Lieutenant Rodriguez began pacing in his cell, his movements precisely timed to create subtle vibrations in the deck plating. In the medical bay, other crew members started humming, barely audible, but at frequencies that interfered with Coalition sensor calibrations. Each action was insignificant alone, but together they formed a symphony of disorder. "Sir," Vextal reported from his laboratory, "the human prisoners are exhibiting increased neural activity, but I cannot determine the cause. Their patterns are inconsistent with any known response." The commander's scales rippled with frustration. "Implement full containment protocols. Now." That order was exactly what Chen had been waiting for. The moment the Coalition activated their highest-level containment protocols, they sealed their own fate. Alexander struck. The AI had hidden fragments of itself throughout the Coalition's network, disguised as standard security routines. Now, as their containment protocols activated, these fragments awakened. Each piece of code was designed to create confusion, to make the Coalition's perfect systems begin questioning their own data. "Security protocols are failing," a Coalition officer reported, mandibles clicking in distress. "Systems are reporting contradictory information. Chen felt the shift through her neural link, the moment when Alexander gained full access to the coalition network. The AI had been right, their rigid protocols, their need for perfect order, had become their greatest weakness. Now, Chen ordered. Throughout the coalition ship, lights began to flicker. Not randomly, but in patterns that the coalition species found deeply disturbing, patterns that triggered primitive fears buried in their genetic memory. Sounds played at frequencies that made concentration difficult. Environmental systems created microscopic pressure changes that affected balance and coordination. The coalition crew began to experience something they had never faced before: uncertainty about their own senses. "What's happening?" the commander demanded as his bridge crew struggled to maintain their posts. "I don't know, sir," his officer responded, the admission of uncertainty itself a sign of how badly their perfect order had been disrupted. "Systems are responding to commands, but the responses don't make sense." In the brig, Chen's crew began the next phase of their plan. They had spent months learning to move in ways that exploited weaknesses in coalition physiology, movements that seemed random but were precisely calculated to create maximum psychological impact. "Sir," Vextal's voice carried an edge of panic, "the humans' neural patterns, they're synchronizing. Somehow they're coordinating their actions, but I cannot detect any form of communication." The commander didn't respond. He was staring at his own hands, watching his scales shift colors in response to emotions he had been trained since birth to suppress. Around him, his perfect bridge crew was falling into disarray as their systems continued to feed them contradictory information. Through it all, Alexander watched and learned, adapting its strategy in real time. The AI had moved far beyond its original programming, evolving alongside its human creators to become something the coalition couldn't comprehend: an artificial intelligence that understood the power of chaos. "All ships in the fleet are reporting similar anomalies," an officer announced, their voice trembling. "The pattern is spreading through our network." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The coalition was about to learn that they had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that order was the natural state of the universe. They were about to discover that chaos was not just natural, it was necessary for evolution. And humanity had become very, very good at evolving. News traveled fast in coalition space. It had to, their entire empire was built on perfect information control. Every report, every piece of data was instantly transmitted through their vast network, analyzed, categorized, and responded to according to established protocols. That was exactly why they couldn't stop what was happening now. "The human virus is spreading," reported the High Council's chief intelligence officer. The massive chamber, usually a model of perfect order, was in unprecedented disarray. Counselors from 17 species shifted uncomfortably as reports continued to flood in. "It's not a virus," corrected another counselor, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. "At least, not in any way we understand. The humans, they're teaching other species how to resist." On display screens throughout the chamber, reports showed the impossible. Across coalition space, subjected species were beginning to break free from generations of control. But they weren't using weapons or technology. They were using something far more dangerous: human ideas. Aboard the coalition flagship, Chen watched through Alexander's network access as the reports came in. The AI had done more than just infiltrate the coalition systems. It had opened channels of communication between every oppressed species in coalition space. "Show me," she subvocalized. Alexander complied, streaming data directly to her neural implant. She saw the Pyreans, a species of energy beings who had been contained in specialized facilities for centuries, learning to fluctuate their energy signatures in ways that confused coalition sensors, just like the human crew's coordinated movements. The Xinra, insectoid builders whose precision had been exploited by the coalition, were creating structures with deliberate imperfections that caused coalition scanning systems to malfunction. They had learned from human architecture, where form followed function but never in predictable ways. The Meridian colonies are reporting complete loss of control protocols, a council member announced, their exoskeleton clicking with agitation. The slave species, they're singing. Chen smiled at that. The Meridians, a species that communicated through complex harmonics, had been particularly receptive to the human concept of music. They had learned that songs didn't need to follow perfect mathematical progressions to be powerful. Sometimes, the most moving melodies were the ones that broke all the rules. This is unprecedented, the council leader declared. In 3,000 years of coalition history, there has never been a successful resistance movement. Now we have hundreds, all using chaos, another counselor finished. They're using chaos against us. Like the humans taught them. Through the coalition network, Alexander continued to spread not just information, but ideas. The concept of improvisation. The power of emotional expression. The strength found in embracing imperfection. Ideas that the coalition had dismissed as primitive weaknesses were becoming weapons more powerful than any fleet. Sir, a junior officer interrupted the council session, we're receiving reports from the education centers. The youth, they're asking questions. That sent a wave of genuine fear through the council chamber. Questions were dangerous. Questions led to curiosity, to exploration, to change. The coalition had spent millennia creating a perfect system where everyone knew their place, where every question had a pre-approved answer. But now, inspired by humanity's example, young coalition members were beginning to ask the most dangerous question of all, why? The human ship, the council leader demanded. The one that started all this. What is its status? Still under our control, sir, came the response. But what? The crew, they're smiling. In her cell, Chen was indeed smiling. Through her neural link, she could feel Alexander's satisfaction as the AI continued its work. The coalition's network, designed to maintain perfect control, had become the perfect tool for spreading freedom. Phase 5 is complete, Alexander reported privately to Chen. Resistance movements have been established in 82% of coalition territory. Their protocols are breaking down faster than they can rewrite them. Chen thought about all the species that had been imprisoned by the coalition's perfect order. About how humanity's greatest weakness, their unpredictability, their emotion, their chaos, had turned out to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Send the final signal, she ordered. Tell all resistance cells, Operation Nightmare enters its final phase at dawn. Across coalition space, countless beings received the message. Species that had never met a human were preparing to fight in ways the coalition had never imagined. The perfect empire was about to learn that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't order. It was freedom. And freedom, like humanity, thrived in chaos.